Information about the world of running, inspiration to fuel passion and excellence, and ideas for making connections and finding community. You're listening to AtoZrunning. Hi everyone, welcome to the AtoZrunning podcast where we help runners thrive. I'm Andy.
And I am Zach. And Allie Kieffer joins us today to discuss her return from injury, specifically a return that finds her happier, healthier, and hungry for more. It's a great conversation about how that was possible and what needed to change. Stick around afterward for updates from the world of running, including another world record on the roads by the slimmest possible margin, and the NCAA cross-country championships, a great recap there, and a 50-mile champ despite wrong turns on the course.
No, last year. This year she didn't make any wrong turns.
I didn't say that. I just simply said a 50-mile champ.
He's
I'm
teasing
trying to build
you guys.
anticipation,
He's teasing
Andy.
you all. Okay, well,
I made
we'll get
no
to
promises. Oh, goodness. Well, you definitely want to make sure before you do any of that kind of stuff that you head to AtoZrunning.com and click the word follow, because how else can you know all the good things there are to know? Well, here's how else. On social media or on YouTube or on any of the podcast places you like to get podcast stuff, we are there. Yeah. Look for AtoZrunning or at AtoZrunning.
I posted a review of the Hip Hook, which is our sponsor for this week and a tool I've been using every single day. And when I posted that review on Instagram, I had a lot of comments from many of you who said that you also have hip flexor pain or discomfort that is interfering with your life. And you were asking questions of me about this tool. One question from Ashley was, how often do I use the Hip Hook? And it's something that you can use daily. However, when you first begin using it, you could get some bruising or some, I guess, you're like making a face. Because it's like super tender. So you're like breaking up fascia and stuff. So
it basically includes a warning label on it that says, warning, this will hurt you.
No,
for the good.
It helps you. It helps you guys all know that as runners, that there are some things like massage and whatnot that you kind of feel a little tender afterwards. So the recommendation is if you are feeling that way or if you have bruising, to take a little bit of time
suck it up and deal
off
with it. Oh, wait.
Doing this. So, but now I'm able to do it every single day to help release because I've been doing it regularly. So I hope that answers your question, Ashley. I love questions. Keep them coming. Again, about the Hip Hook, because I loved it so much. When they asked if I wanted to become an affiliate, I said yes, because I really believe in this product. And yeah, I mean, if I'm going to be recommending it, I might as well, right? So A2Z, ATOZ is the code for 10% off.
10% off.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff. And listen, any of you who are familiar with things like deep tissue work, myofascial releases, and all of the various forms of trauma-based, slightly trauma, just little bits of trauma-based recovery stuff, you know that it generally hurts the worst the first times you do it. So you get past that. Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yep. And also, it's a kind of a learning curve as well, finding that right exact spot that you want to release. And it is a really amazing tool that I have, like Zach said, I get really enthusiastic every time I use it because it's helping me sleep better. And so that makes me happy. Of course it would, right?
And it makes everyone else in the house happy.
When I get more sleep.
Mom is better slept.
That is true.
And on that note, let's get started.
So the ideal place to be after being injured would be happy, healthy, and hungry for more. That recipe can set you up for a tremendous comeback. Now, it sounds great, but it's a really hard thing to do. And that's why we brought on the show today Allie Kieffer. She's a high-level runner who's done amazing things in the sport. She's a coach, a nutritionist, and of course, a pro runner. And she got launched pretty early into the scene. After college running, she was 10th at the USA Cross Country Championships, and she earned a spot on Team USA at the NACYAC Championship, where the team won. Team USA won there. And then throughout the years, there's a lot of notable races that she's done, but she's had a lot of high-level finishes at championship races and international events. Notably, Kieffer was 5th at the 2017 New York City Marathon and 7th in 2018. So she's had 2 top 10 finishes in the last several years. And then in 2019, Allie found herself injured, and now she's coming back and she is very driven. She's doing some great racing and she's in great shape to get going. So we're excited to talk to Allie. Let's hear the conversation. Hi, Allie. Welcome to the AtoZrunning podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We are so excited to have you on, and I got a chance to meet you in person in Grand Rapids just a few weeks ago. So hello again.
Hello again. Yes, I was wondering if because you didn't race that day. So it's like, I wonder if she comes to the races to meet people for the podcast, because that's a good move.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason. We've had a few people on the show that were racing and I wanted to be there to cheer. And then we have some athletes that were running. And honestly, I'm truly a run junkie and I absolutely love the race atmosphere. So to be down there, even when I didn't get a chance to compete, was still super fun. Yeah, it was fun to get to meet you in that Starbucks later on. So thank you for agreeing to come on the show.
Of course. Yeah, I like doing the podcast. So happy to be here.
Yeah. And I read somewhere that you're looking to start one, or have you started it yet?
So I was going to start one. And unfortunately, I did a bunch of interviews with people that are probably never going to see the daylight. But so I feel bad for them because they gave their time, but I don't think I'm going to do it. It was really going to be a training podcast. And I just, what ended up happening is a lot of people didn't want their training to be part of the podcast because it's really their coaches, or their coach doesn't charge. They don't want to be a part of like giving it away for, it just became a big thing. And I don't really want to get in the middle of someone not wanting to mess with their coach's training. You know,
Sure.
like I can respect that someone might not want to put it public.
Well, there's a lot of outlets that you already give to the running community, which I really appreciate. You're very thoughtful in your reflections. And of course, you're a coach and a nutritionist and a pro runner. So you have a lot of expertise in the running world and lots of ways that you're giving to it. So we really appreciate you coming on our show. And speaking of which, you had posted after the 25K that you were happy, healthy, and ready for more, hungry for more. So I would love to dive into that today, because I thought that was really profound. To get to a space where you're feeling those 3 things, I think is really amazing. But before we do, can you get our audience up to speed on what the last few years have looked like for you?
Yes. So I shocked myself and everyone else and got 5th in the New York City Marathon in 2017. And then the next year I got 7th, but a faster time. And then basically from there, I've been injured and trying to get back to the spot of like doing as well. And so now it's, 3 years just happened in New York City Marathon. And so it's been 3 years since I've really had a good marathon. And I've just rode a lot of ups and downs. I wouldn't even say ups. I would say downs and mediocre results. And so I think going through that and realizing I still wanted to run got me to the happy, healthy, hungry for more.
So it's in the in-between. So when you were having those more mediocre times for you, because you're coming from, running, what was it, 2:28 in the marathon, and then having to go through that whole rehabilitation process. I read that you had numerous different injuries that were part of this recovery and returning to health. In that time, before you returned to the happy, healthy, and hungry for more, what kept you consistent in this sport?
Yeah, so I was sponsored leading up to the Olympic trials in 2020. And then in my contract, I had to get top 6 and I didn't. I ended up dropping out of the race. And so I didn't have a contract anymore. And I think a lot of people after that were like, oh, why are you still running? Or, like, what are you doing? What are you really going to do now? And I never thought that myself. I just figured I'd figure out a way to make it work. And I didn't really know what the way was, but I knew I wanted to do it. And so maybe I don't think enough into the future about like what other things I could be doing that would get me paid more. But I'm more happy just like doing the thing that makes me happy. And so I realized that I wanted to run, and not just because I think I still have PRs in me, but because I feel like it's making me the best version of myself still.
Mhm.
And I mean, I see like the mom pushing the stroller and I'm like, that's gonna be me someday. Like I see the people, like the older couple that, are maybe haven't kept up with the strength and they're a little bit to the side running. And I'm like, that's gonna be me one day. Like I've been running since I was 5. I joined a track club when I was 5 years old. And it's a part of me that makes me a better version of me. So I think that I never really dove into like how much it meant to me until everyone was like, why are you still doing this? I'm like, well, I've never thought of not doing this. And I have been burned out in the past, and I like quote unquote retired back in like 2012 or 2013, but I didn't feel burnt out in my legs. Like back then I thought that was kind of the best I was ever going to run, and I should just hang up my shoes and, move on to something else. And I just didn't feel like I was done this time. So, yeah, I forget the question now, but that's a little bit of the story of how I got here where I am now. But what was your question?
How you sustain that consistency over your time
Oh,
of
yeah.
being injured, which I think
Okay.
that was a great answer, because you're saying that this is part of who I am and how I envision myself being in the future. This isn't just a profession, but also it's a lifestyle. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
That's exactly what it is. It's really, I don't even think of it as a profession. I think of it as a lifestyle. Yeah. Like, and so then I did like try different coaches and train with different groups. And I never really was like, oh, it's either this is the last coach I'm going to have. It doesn't work out, I'm going to retire. Or this is the last training group. Like I just took one stage at a time and, asked people for help. Slid into people's DMs or called them and begged them to coach me, or asked if I could go with their training group when I was going to be in that part of the world. And I just kind of evolved into that. I got back into being fit. And so that's great. I love that part of it. But yeah, I guess I just kept with it to answer the question, and sustained it because I was still enjoying it and didn't really overthink like what that meant.
Wow, yeah. Oh, very profound. Am I hearing you say that like part of it was that you had to keep choosing it? Like you had to keep reaching out and being persistent. There wasn't like, for you, your consistency was all yours. It wasn't somebody else's influence into your consistency, because you were having to actually make these plans yourself, reach out to these people yourself.
Yeah, I definitely made a conscious choice to do it because it wasn't always easy. I'll admit, like during the pandemic, especially the Black Lives Matter movement, when I was like really big a year ago or a little over a year ago, like I struggled, to like want to be competitive. And I just was okay with it not being super competitive in the moment. And the coach I had at the time wasn't really okay with that. But I just stuck with like what made sense for me, because during my life, I think running has taken on a lot of different meanings. It's like, I am very competitive right now. I want to win stuff, want to win races. And that's cool. That's probably how I started in it, because it was the first thing I was good at. But it also was like the way I made friends, and it clears my mind, like it's therapeutic. There's so many different reasons why I run. And even through a week, I probably go through a bunch of different reasons. And so I just let it be what it was on the day, instead of like, especially we didn't have really races, so you didn't have to be crazy competitive. But yeah, I just let it be what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that was easier, honestly, because I got dropped, because I didn't have a sponsor. I didn't have to like do anything for anyone else. I could really just let it be what it was to me, and there's no pressure.
Yeah, the liberation of having it be for you. So I guess that brings me to the question of what things have been more fulfilling or more helpful to you as far as reasons why you are healthy, happy, and hungry for more. Like which of those things, because you said it's been a lot of things to you throughout the years. So what are some of the better ones?
Well, I mean, I'm healthy because I do all the strength exercises. Like I think I would have enjoyed being healthy my entire career, but I did not put in the work to do the right things. And I love lifting, to be honest. I've always like been a big lifter, but I want to like lift heavy shit and drop it. Like put me in a CrossFit gym. And I needed to do the band exercises and all that junk. And so I honestly got this like it's called a nerve, but it's a little insole in your shoe that like shows how you're landing and your weaknesses and the balance between them, and then gives you exercises based on all that information. And it's like 10 or 15 minutes a day. And in the beginning, I was so sore, like it was kind of embarrassing. But then now I just do it every day, and right before I run, so it doesn't bother me anymore. But that's definitely the healthy part, because now I've been doing like a lot more than I've ever done before. And I mean that from not a mileage standpoint, but in like an intensity and an amount of miles that are intense. I'll do like, I want to say between 9 and 12 miles, for like a workout. So like 2 times a week. And then I have a fast long run on the weekend, which is, probably more like 12 to 18 miles. So not even including warm-ups. So it's all like, sub 6-minute miles. And it's a lot to recover from. And the people around me think I'm crazy, but I swear I can do it only because I did all that strength stuff. So that's the healthy part. The happy part is I think because when I first got into running, it was really the first thing I was good at. And then I put a lot of stock then in being good, because that's how I was like proved my worth, and really not to anyone externally, but it was an internal thing. So I know that like my parents, my family, they don't really care if I'm running fast or not. Like they just want to see me happy in whatever I'm doing. And it's ironic because then I was trying to show this worth that was kind of taking the happiness away. And I definitely didn't set out the past few years to have bad results to then teach myself I'm still worthy, but that's kind of what happened. Like you have a choice of you just think horribly about yourself, or you figure out that you have a lot more to give the world than just the race results. So that's the happy part, is that I'm like, kind of like you said, you're grateful to be at the race, even though you didn't compete. Like I competed and I wanted to win, but I was grateful just to get the chance to compete, because I didn't win, and that's okay. It's not like a life or death situation anymore. And it's just, I get to enjoy the situation I'm in. And then the hungry for more is like, well, I have the happy and healthy. And so I still think I can win, like I haven't given up on myself, and I'm going to go to the next race and try to win.
Yeah, that's all super profound. Wow. So many golden nuggets in there. I'm going to have to go through and like write some of these things down. Our audience too, you guys, be taking notes. Yeah. Wow. I think that a lot of us can resonate with pieces of your journey in our own, because there is never going to be a time that we're not going to be faced with our whys and faced with our weaknesses. I'm currently facing some of my own, and realizing that we have to do these small things to do the thing we love too. So that was a lot that you just unpacked, and I appreciate you thinking through all of those things. So which of those would you say is hardest for you? So is it hardest to do the strength? Is it hardest to keep your perspective and your happiness? Or is it hardest to dream big and to allow yourself the confidence to believe in yourself?
Yeah, I think it's hardest to stay happy. I'm like grateful for what I have. It's a conscious thing to remind myself to continue doing. I think I have been a little bit of like, I was spoiled. I don't know. Like, I think I'm entitled a little. I think I come from that entitlement little kid. And so I have to like work my mind out of that. And sometimes it flows more than in other times. It's flowing right now, and that's wonderful. But I know that it's, let's say that I do go to another marathon and run really well. I'll have to work extra hard on not thinking that it's just going to come that easily and everything's going to be that great. Because I do think a lot of staying happy and grateful is on my expectation of like what I think or perceive that this next race or next whatever is going to be like. And if I kind of lower the expectation that I will be happy with any result, then I can truly live in that grateful mindset instead of like, oh, well, I'm going to win. Right. And so I even go in, I won the race before I met you. So I ran a 10-mile a couple of weeks before the 25K and I won it. And so kind of when I was going to the 25K, I'm like, I can win this. Like, I'm going to win this. And you want to do a certain amount of telling yourself you can do it and building yourself up. But I tried to counter that with like, you can win this and it's going to really hurt. You're going to suffer for a long time and you can suffer. Like positive with like a realistic side to it, because then I realized I get to the race. And if I haven't done the work of saying how bad it's going to hurt, I'm like, oh, why does it hurt? Oh, I can't do this. Oh, it's not like what I expected. So I've tried to like change that a little bit so I can get the most out of myself. If that makes sense.
Yeah. The mental game is so tough because like you said, we have to believe we can do our A goal. We have to believe that we can do that in that race and place where we want to, because otherwise, we're going to limit ourselves. But at the same time, to be in the race and be adaptable and to be able to take what the day gives us and still do our best for that day, no matter what the external circumstances are, no matter how fast anybody else runs, that's also there. So there's a tension between that, the ability to take a bad situation and then make it better or do our best on that day, but then also believing like I can have the best day of my life today. And I'm not going to like count that out.
Right. And then I was in London for a few months and I left because I had a couple weddings to go to in the US. And one of them was the same day as the 25K. And the race got moved back an hour. So I ended up missing my flight.
Oh no.
So I didn't make it to the wedding. And it again was like, I got upset, not gonna lie, in the airport, and realized I missed my flight. But then, you have to like recalibrate again and be like, okay, well, I'm here, I'm in Michigan, and how do I make the most of this situation? So I do think that one is of like being grateful and staying in the happy mindset is like a choice that I get to make several times a day.
Mm-hmm. You get to practice it. We get to practice our consistency, just like in running, we get to practice, being in control of how we perceive or how we experience an event, because it can be drastically different depending on our mindset.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. So can you think of a time where it was, and you kind of spoke about it briefly, but where you weren't in that same framework, and what do you think contributed to that? So like, let's stick with the happiness one, where there a time where you were in your running and you were feeling like it was not fulfilling you. It wasn't like you were thinking about the future in it as much, like it wasn't as exciting. Can you take us to that time and maybe some of the things that contributed to the negative aspects?
So in 2017, I got 5th at the New York City Marathon and ran 2:29. And then the next year I went back and I really wanted to get on the podium, and I ended up 7th place, but I ran a minute and a half faster. And that was like a really good result. But I have pictures of me in tears afterwards. Like I was so bummed to get 7th. And the goal of 3rd there's nothing wrong with that. Like that's, sort of logical that you want to get placed better. And you're not in control of the other people that show up for the race. So they had great days and I wasn't mad at them, but I was disappointed in myself. And I look back and I'm like, that was so silly, like that's so sad that I wasted time. I was honestly, I feel like depressed after that race. I was also a little bit I was banged up going in, and it didn't interfere with the race at all. It just, if you go in a little bit like banged up, I think you come out of a marathon like very banged up. So I was taking a long break afterwards to heal my body, and so I wasn't running and using that as therapy, and everything was kind of compounding that. I felt really bad, and it's a PR. I mean, who cries after a PR? Who cries after a top 10 finish? Like, it was just, and I think a lot of that stemmed from the fact that I was kind of back then treating it more as a business, and didn't accept wherever I was, which is a conversation I have with a lot of my athletes now, because we all want PRs, and for a lot of us, they're still ahead of us, and for sometimes that's not really realistic anymore. And either way, like, if you don't get the PR, but you gave your best effort, what more did you want from yourself? And so, I think that, like, part of what I look back and say I didn't do well there is just accept that, like, maybe there's a couple of things I could have done differently, but I actually went out and did the plan my coach and I set out to do. So I probably would have planned it differently, knowing more in hindsight, but I didn't not give 100%. I did everything I could that day, and that was the best result that I was going to have. So, like, why be disappointed with your 100%?
Yeah. So it sounds like now you have like a really great framework for thinking through your races afterwards. Would you talk us through some of your reflections, like post-race reflections? What kinds of things do you think about, and how do you help yourself move forward in that positive direction?
Yeah, well, I guess after the 25K, I used to probably go through it a little bit deeper than I have been doing recently, and, like, been really critical on myself. And I'm less critical now. I did a race last weekend. That was a local race I won. And then the one a couple of weeks before I met you that I won. So you're kind of less critical when you win. So really only I have that 25K to go off of. I haven't raced other than those in a while. So, in that 25K, I kind of reflected on the things I did before I got to the 25K. I'm not unhappy with anything I did during the race. But I was in London and I was training there for a while, and I came back to the US a few days before a race in Philadelphia. I hung out with my mom, and then we did the race in Philadelphia, and then I flew to Texas, hung out for like a day, and then I drove to Alabama. And my dad had been in the hospital when I was in London. So he was totally fine by the time I saw him out of the hospital, doing really well. But it just seemed like I should go visit my dad. Like, if you took the time to go to London, you can take the time to go visit your family. So I did that. And there was a heat wave, and he lives in Orange Beach, Alabama. So, we laid on the beach together. He rode his bike. I ran some days, but really I was like on vacation. So I didn't do the, like, running stuff. I had a lot of excuses. It's really hot. Like, I'm alone. And I went for my runs, but I didn't do as much work as I should have done. And so I kind of looked back on that as like, well, that was an active recovery couple weeks before I went to the race in Michigan, which is probably not the smartest way to go to a national championship. But I also don't think I would have changed that much, because I needed to go visit my dad and my mom, really. So you make choices, and you just have to, like, okay, was that a smart choice or not a smart choice? And what would I change in the future? And accept that the past is the past and you can't change it. And so if the worst thing I did in the past month is go visit my dad after he was in the hospital, like, I'm not going to regret that in 20 years. Right. So we're good. But, you definitely, like, should, if it was the Olympic trials, like, maybe visit dad after.
Yeah. This digestion is really great because it does bring all of life into running, because running itself is not life. There is much more, even though many of us and a lot of those who are listening, like, we care a lot about running. So sometimes it's hard to not let that absorb what we do and how we think. So that's really cool that you spent that time with him. I'm glad that you shared that. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Running isn't life. It's just part of life, but it can feel like we're often like really unhappy when things don't go spectacularly well, because we're kind of holding out hope for that. And we've invested a lot of time and energy in it, right? People are working a 40-hour day or week and then going for runs in their off time and then hang out, like taking care of their family, like their only free time they're putting into running. So for it to not work out is a bummer, but like all it is a bummer, because did that help you and make you a better person to your family or better at your job or all the other things? I think that's where I'm at now, where like I want the results, but the result doesn't prove that I deserve anything more or like should put time in this and, or didn't, shouldn't have put time in it. Like winning doesn't mean that you're necessarily doing the right thing. It means that you had a good race. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like I'm not articulating that well, but it's just like we focus on the result, and I don't think that's really the most important part of it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, because there's so many external factors that we cannot control. Like we can't control if someone comes to the starting line faster than us. Like we can, all of our work, obviously in preparation, all that we do in training, we can get ourselves to best preparation for us on that day, but we can't control what anyone else does.
Yeah.
So when we are able to have those moments where everything comes together and we're able to beat our competition, there's obviously race tactics and things that we also have in play, but there are things we can control, and then there's things we can't control. So to take joy in the things that we can, and then also to put it in perspective with life. I think everything you're saying makes a lot of sense and is resonating with me and those who are listening. So the hungry for more part, it just looks to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that hungry for more is a part is something that you are really good at. Like you are usually hungry for more, and you're good at dreaming and coming up with what you're going to do, and then also using that in turn to inspire others. Can you talk to me about that last part, hungry for more?
Yeah. So that probably is the thing I'm best at. I agree with you. And I think a lot of the people I coach will say, put out a time. And it's like, is that, a good goal, like this audacious goal? And I'm all about it. I mean, I might not achieve mine and they might not achieve theirs, but if it helps me get out the door and it helps them get out the door, then let's use it. And then I, like a few weeks out from whatever that goal race, I'll tell you if it's not, that's a horrible plan to go out on that pace. And I think my coach would do the same for me. And I'm aware enough of like what makes sense and what doesn't. But yeah, I like the big goal. I think it's exciting. It's like, I call it sexy, like you want to get up and get it done and make it happen. And it definitely helps me do all the things like that I'm not as good at, right? Like trying to stay grateful and do the little strength exercises, because I'm dreaming of that really fast time. That's going to be so cool to have next to my name.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't happen, well, I shot my shot, it's not going to go, I'm not going to retire or like grow old wondering what if. I tried, and I don't really see that as a failure. So like, I'm not afraid to put it out there and then never achieve it. Yeah, I don't know. And I just think it'd be so cool if it happened.
Would you share some of those with us?
I mean, sub 226 has been one I've been talking about for a while. I think this training block has been going well. And so like every month I'm like, and maybe it's 225. And, it just kind of gets crazy. But I definitely want to sub 226. I think the Olympic standard for the 10K was sub 3125. And I honestly feel like I could do that. I mean, it sounds crazy because my best is 3209. But I was like, that was 2017. I was coaching myself, and I didn't exactly like, I know way more what I'm doing now, but I think it is really hard to coach yourself. And I wasn't giving myself everything I needed. I was giving myself the things I really liked. So yeah, I'd like to break 3125. And so along with that is that the standards for making the world championships came out in the marathon. And since I didn't do a world marathon major, I probably have like a very, very small percentage shot to make the team. So I will definitely be looking to make that 10K team after I run a spring marathon. I'm going to try to come back to the track.
Awesome.
And then just see what happens.
Yeah. See what happens when you're healthy, happy, and hungry for more. A lot of things can happen. A lot of good things can happen.
Yeah, I agree.
So finally, to wrap it up, there's so much I'd love to chat with you. Like we could talk for a long time about numerous things, but if there's somebody who's listening today who is not in their healthiest spot, they're not really feeling happy about running, and they've kind of lost some of their drive, what would you say to them today?
I mean, I don't think if you don't want to go, you don't have to go. I feel like often we feel like we have to keep running just because that's what we've been doing. But I mean, you're allowed to like take a little break and come back to it when you really want to do it again. I took like 6 months off or something before that 5th place at the New York City Marathon. I went hiking for 2 months and I just don't think it's like really that big of a deal to take a break if you're not feeling it. And see what is speaking to you. Maybe you want to do something else and you go do that thing and then you come back to running. Maybe you don't come back to running. Maybe you realize like it was taking away a lot from your family in a not good way. It's just like, you don't have to overthink it so much and enjoy whatever you're doing whenever you're doing it. When you're not, unless it's like something that you got to do the job to make the money to then enjoy your life. But I think for the most part, we should be enjoying our lives. And so if you're not mostly enjoying your life, you don't take a break.
That's such great advice. Thank you so much, Allie. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and we'll keep our audience up to date on your races coming up and the exciting things you have in the future.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks so much to Allie for that awesome conversation. When I was talking with her, I couldn't help but resonate with the piece of it where she was talking about how she had to do it for her. Like these external pressures and the motivation of the work of running wasn't what was keeping her drive alive during these harder spells of running. And a lot of us are going to come to face that at some point if we haven't already, where it's hard. Like it might not be like the win that is driving us to get back right away. Of course, Allie, she does win a lot of races, but I guess in terms of needing that time where you just love it, you do it because you enjoy it, is very important for all of us. That
is the truth. Speaking of enjoying running, we got some people who have really enjoyed some of their racing lately to share with you next in the world of running. Number 1 on the list in our current update is a new half marathon world record for the men this time. And in fact, this record beats the previous record by 1 second.
Numero uno.
As reported by World Athletics, Jacob Kiplimo of Uganda took 1 second off Kibiwott Kandi of Kenya's astounding half marathon record. I say it's astounding because his record was like nearly 30 seconds under the previous record. But remember, Kiplimo was only 5 seconds behind Kibiwott Kandi in that world
Same
record
race.
In that race, second to Kandi. And so it was no surprise when Jacob Kiplimo did break the record here on November 21st in Lisbon. But, no surprise. But, I mean, he broke a world record, so it's always good.
Was Kibiwott Kandi in this race?
No.
Okay.
He was not. But you recall Kibiwott Kandi made his marathon debut in fact, in New York.
That would have been a really fast
would have been
turnaround.
Week, 2 weeks. So anyway, what happens here is really quite notable for a number of reasons. First, I want to take you through the progression for a moment.
Okay.
Because at 5,000 meters, at 5K, Kiplimo was in 13:40. All right, 13:40 through 5K.
For a 5K.
This is a half marathon, yep. And then the next 5K, he came through 10K in 27:05, which was 13:25 for his second 5K.
What?
And then at 15K, he came through in 40:27 which was 13:22
Oh, it's nasty.
for his next 5K, and 40 seconds under the current world record for 15K held by countryman Joshua Cheptegei. So yes, Kiplimo did just break the 15K world record in his half marathon.
Is that official?
World record? No.
Okay.
Because it wasn't an official timing process for the 15K part of it.
Watch out
That
for
said,
Kiplimo.
yeah, so 40 seconds under that previous record, yeah, he could do that. But many have said that Cheptegei's record was a little bit weak to begin with. Cheptegei could have run quite a bit faster too.
That's
But
so funny when things like
who
that are
knows?
called weak and
Yes.
they're so flying.
here's the
very
kicker:
fast.
Kiplimo was at this point nearly a minute under pace of the previous world record, and gave back that whole minute in the next 5K to the point where it was said that nearing the finish, he looked up at the clock, realized, oh boy, I gotta go, and took off at a dead sprint to barely nab the world record by 1 second.
Oh, my word.
Yes.
That's exciting. And he won the race by 2 minutes, right?
Yeah. Won the race by a landslide.
Yeah.
And so, no, this was just a solo time
have a-
trial effort.
okay.
They were never with him. No,
Oh, wow.
They were never with him. So that's hard to do. By the way, just a quick background here, because in case Jacob Kiplimo's name is not too familiar to you yet, it ought to be, if you've been listening to us at all. But if you need a little refresher, Jacob Kiplimo competed in his first Olympic Games in 2016 in Rio when he was 15 years old.
15.
He was 15 years old at his first
tender
Olympic
age
Games.
of 15.
Yes, youngest Olympian from Uganda ever, and he was the youngest Olympic distance runner at the Games in that year as well. Yeah, and then he won the World Half Marathon Championships in 2020, and I mentioned he ran only 5 seconds behind the world record-setting performance Kibiwak Candy's half marathon, also in 2020. And then he earned a bronze medal in the Tokyo Olympics in the 10,000 meters, as well as finishing fifth in the 5,000 meters in the same games. So this guy is just on a warpath in these recent years and doesn't look to be slowing down. Now everyone, of course, is saying, well, what's he going to do in a full marathon? Well, remember, Kibiwak Candy made his full marathon debut, and it didn't go so hot. The marathon is a tough nut to crack.
It is. And I'd like
we
to
hope he cracks
see
it eventually.
Kibiwak Candy and Jacob Kiplimo yet again battling it out.
I want to see Kiplimo doing more before he just goes strictly marathon.
Yep.
Most of the time when these guys start running marathons, that's all they ever do again. Mostly because they make so much stinking money that it's not really cost effective to do anything else at that point. But
You can recover faster, though, from halves.
and the track is so exciting. Yeah. So we'll see. He's got leg speed. His 3,000 meter time is blazing. Okay. Anyway, enough on Jacob Kiplimo. Watch out for him.
Yes. So NCAA cross country championships, bringing it to the dirt.
Whoa, look at that transition to the dirt. Or grass. Cross country really is grass.
Gravel.
But I guess both. Anything. Cross country, right? Okay, so for the men's 10K race, it's not a 10,000 meter when it's cross country. It's 10K, as reported by Let's Run. Now, notably, we don't actually spend a ton of time covering cross country on the show here. We spend most of our time talking about road racing and track when it's track season. But mostly that's because there's so much happening in cross country. Like there's just tons and tons of races for a very short period of time and lots of details. And so we wait until the end of the season and then kind of throw at you some of the summaries. That's what we're doing right here. Always worth noting, because NCAA cross country championships basically tells you who the next legendary runners are going to be. Most of the time. Not always. Frequently. And so who's winning these races, who is finishing in the top 5 or 10, these are people to watch. Notably, in the men's side, Connor Mance of BYU is a legend already, and he's only getting started, theoretically. We'll see. This is his second NCAA cross-country title. Now, 2 years in a row. Well, years. The last NCAA championship was in March, but it would have, so 2 titles in a row. By the way, first American man to repeat titles since Bob Kennedy did it, and also he's only the 3rd American man to do this in the last 50 years. The other 2, Bob Kennedy, who's like the first American man to run under 13 minutes in the 5K, things like that, and Steve Prefontaine.
Okay.
Like, this is putting him in just amazing legendary status. Okay, so yes, good stuff, but perhaps, according to Let's Run's coverage, one of the most interesting things about Mance's victories is that these have been battles, and he clearly is a battler. So the quote here I want to read you from Let's Run because it just sums it up quite perfectly. When he won title number 1, back in March in Stillwater. He was dropped 3 times before finally dropping the hammer himself with 2K to go. But today, Mance was gapped in the final straightaway, but grimaced his way through it and reeled Kyoko from Campbell back to his second straight NCAA title.
Yeah,
Literally, in the final kick, he was getting beat and somehow rallied before the line.
So hard to do.
Amazing.
It's so much. Gotta go to the pain cave for that one. I tell you what.
I love it. Cross country is glory. So good. Okay, well, for the men's team title, Northern Arizona University won in what is now their 5th of the last 6 years.
Wow.
Yes, 5 of the last 6 cross country titles for the men's team race have gone to Northern Arizona University, and that puts them at only 3 programs ever have done this or better.
Wow.
So, just insane, amazingness. That's really good stuff. But in the women's race, there were lots of other good things too. I want to share with you 2 very quick details that stood out to me. And certainly, Andy, I'm curious your reaction here. So for the women's 6K race, it's the women's run 6K, the men run 10K. Whitney Orton of BYU also won the women's race. So BYU took both individual titles, which is exciting. That's good stuff. She was the first of BYU to win the individual title, which is cool.
Okay.
Yes, for the female. Also, NC State won their first team title ever in program history, and there's a couple fascinating tidbits about this. The first thing that stood out to me is the coach of NC State, Lori, I believe her name is. Sorry, I don't have her name written down. But she has been with NC State for 30 years, never worked anywhere else. And this is it's like the dream come true of her life. It's incredible. And she, by the way, also herself is an esteemed runner from back in her day too. So that's really exciting. I can't imagine how exciting that was for her, because it's like, this is my life career and we did it. Also, but an interesting tidbit about the team that I find very fascinating, their top 2 finishers, Kelsey Schmiel and Caitlin Tui.
Caitlin Tui,
who we've been talking about, both of them high school studs recently, and have been with NC State for the last year or 2 years in Schmiel's case. They were competitors in high school, finishing 2 years in a row, first and second in Nike Cross Nationals. 2 years in a row. So clearly these 2 ladies have experienced racing each other. Decided collegiately to join forces, which is always an interesting move, and it has paid dividends for NC State, as well as the 2 of them. So both of them finished in the top 12 or so in the race, which is great. And in the last go-around, NC State was runner-up the previous year. So since Caitlin Tui and Kelsey Schmiel have been teammates together, they've never been worse than second in a team title, which is really kind of exciting.
Yeah.
And they're young, so we'll see how that continues,
really neat.
if indeed it does.
So a couple props that I want to mention, just because, they're local here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, or near Grand Rapids, I should say. Grand Valley State University won the national title for D2. And then my alma mater, Cornerstone University, the women were 3rd, which is the first podium finish for the cross country program. So
I did not know that.
For the women.
All right. Exciting times all around in cross country. But since we're on the topic of difficult things to do in running.
The JFK 50 miler is legendary. I guess we've been using that word a little too much this episode, but this definitely deserves the status, because it's a very esteemed course and people know it. Adam Peterman debuted and won.
Oh, man.
His first 50
so,
miler.
Adam, you have to never do it again. And then you'll be able to tell people, I've never lost that race.
Well, he ran away with the title in 5 hours, 19 minutes, and 38 seconds, which is the JFK's number 2 all-time performance.
Wow.
Yeah. Another all-time performance for the day was the women's winner, Sarah Cummings. She was 3rd on the all-time list. And last year, she was doing great, but had an unfortunate wrong turn. So Sarah was coming in with a vengeance to take the title. And I guess she ran a few extra miles last year. More than 50, which is like...
Come on. You're already running 50. What's a few more?
What's a few extra? So congratulations to both Sarah and Adam.
Excellent stuff. Well, look, there is always more to talk about, which is why you need to be in the know. So stay tuned with us next week for more from the world of running. Also, you got to head to the places where the information's at. like AtoZrunning.com. We got the word follow up at the top, so it makes it easy for you to figure that part out. It's also right next to the word coaching, which I know is a place you intend to spend a lot of time. And hit us up on all the places where you like to consume your content, YouTube, podcasts, or social media, whatever's easiest for you, and we'll be there.
Yeah, and thanks again to Allie for coming on the show. And if you enjoyed this podcast episode, maybe share or let a friend know that you listen to the A to Z Running podcast. We appreciate you. You're the one who helps us grow. So thanks so much for joining us, and have a great week.